All right, so get this. We're diving into something pretty unique today. The Plan of Organization 2024 for the Person County Republican Party in North Carolina.
Okay.
And this is not something you get to see every day. It's like a behind-the-scenes look at how a local political party actually runs.
It's really interesting. I mean, they've really thought of everything.
Yeah, it's like their rule book covers everything from membership and conventions
Yeah.
to committees and even what happens if someone goes rogue. There's a whole section on party disloyalty, which we'll get to later.
Sounds intense.
But first, let's start with the basics. If you're a registered Republican in Person County, you're automatically a member of the party.
Okay.
They have monthly meetings, always, on the third Thursday at 6:30 p.m.
I wonder if they have good snacks at those meetings.
Ooh, that's a good question. Good snacks could definitely boost attendance, but the big event is their annual convention.
Right.
It happens in March, just before the district convention, and this is where it gets interesting. It's not open to the public. Only registered Republicans and their approved guests can attend.
It's really all about electing delegates to go to those district and state conventions.
Okay, so it's a pretty exclusive event.
It is. They even have a credentials committee
Wow.
to verify that everyone there is actually a registered Person County Republican.
You can't just like walk in and say, hey, I'm a Republican, let me in.
Nope. They're making sure only the right people are choosing their representatives.
Makes sense.
And one more thing, to be a delegate, you have to be physically present at the convention.
Oh, wow.
No absentee ballots, no calling in a favor from a friend.
So they're really emphasizing showing up in person.
They are.
It makes you wonder, why is it about fostering a sense of community, or is it more about controlling the process?
You know, that is a really good question. I wonder how they view the role of technology in all of this.
Yeah.
Like, do they embrace online tools, or are they more traditional in their approach?
Yeah, like does commenting on their Facebook page count as active participation? Because to be in a leadership position, you have to have attended at least half the meetings in the past 2 years.
Right. So no couch potato leaders allowed?
Definitely not. And speaking of leadership, they have some serious qualifications.
Oh, yeah. They don't mess around.
You have to have been a registered Republican for at least 2 years, live in Person County, and get this, have at least a high school diploma or equivalent.
It's interesting.
So it's not just about showing up and being enthusiastic. They have some specific standards in place.
They really do, and it gets even more interesting.
Orgadoni.
They do thorough background checks, no felony convictions unless your rights have been fully restored or your record expunged.
Wow.
And they specifically say you can't have been convicted of a felony, a misdemeanor involving moral turpitude.
Okay, hold on. Moral turpitude, what does that even mean?
It is a bit vague, but I
Yeah.
think it shows they want their leaders to have a certain image, a certain set of values.
So they're setting a high bar. They want to make sure their leaders are squeaky clean.
Absolutely. And once you clear all those hurdles, there are specific elected positions within the party.
Okay, like what?
You've got your chairman, vice chairman, secretary, treasurer, and precinct chairman.
So it sounds like a pretty well-defined structure.
It is. They also have optional positions for assistant secretary and assistant treasurer.
Got it. So each of these roles has its own set of responsibilities, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah. The document goes into detail about each position and who's responsible for what.
Okay, so they're not just titles. These are
Yeah.
real jobs with real duties.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you have the committees.
The committees.
That's where a lot of the actual work gets done.
Like what kind of committees are we talking about?
Well, the big one is the County Executive Committee, or CEC for short.
Okay, the CEC.
It's made up of the officers we talked about, the precinct chairs, subcommittee chairs, and even the immediate past chairman.
So that's a pretty large group. How do they make sure things run smoothly?
Well, they have these strict rules about quorum.
Uh-huh.
A certain number of members have to be present for a vote to be valid.
Oh, interesting.
They also designate voting and non-voting members. Everything is very structured and accountable.
So they've really thought this through. They want to make sure everyone is on the same page.
They definitely do. And they have procedures in place for just about everything.
So, like, what kind of procedures?
Well, for example, what if someone can't fulfill their duties or misses too many meetings?
Okay, yeah, what happens then?
There's a whole section on vacancies and removals.
Oh, wow.
They even have rules for handing over party assets and records if someone leaves the CEC.
It's like they've anticipated every possible scenario.
It really is. They want to keep things running smoothly no matter what.
That's pretty impressive. All right, so let's move on to something a little more interesting.
Okay.
How do they choose candidates for public office?
That's where the Review and Vetting Committee comes in.
The Review and Vetting Committee.
They're responsible for scouting out potential candidates and making sure they're a good fit for the party.
So it's not just anyone who can run under the Republican banner.
Not at all. They have a whole list of things that disqualify a candidate what they call not in good standing.
Like what kind of things are we talking about?
Well, things like inconsistent positions with the party platform, questionable legal or moral standing, lack of association with the party itself, dereliction of duty. They've really covered all the bases.
So they're really scrutinizing these candidates.
Absolutely.
Makes you wonder how they define moral standing, though.
Yeah, it's a little open to interpretation.
It is.
But I think it gets to the heart of what the party stands for, what they value.
So they're trying to project a certain image, a certain set of values with their candidates.
Exactly.
So they're setting a high bar.
They are.
That's for sure.
Well,
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground already.
we have.
From the surprisingly strict requirements to become a leader to the intense vetting process for candidates.
It's pretty fascinating.
But before we move on, I'm curious about your initial impressions.
Okay.
What stands out to you the most about this plan of organization so far?
Honestly, it's the level of detail and structure.
Yeah?
We've clearly thought through every possible scenario and laid out how to handle it.
They really have. It's like a blueprint for running a local party.
It is, and it gives you a real glimpse into the inner workings of the political process.
I agree. And I'm sure we'll uncover even more intriguing details as we continue our deep dive.
I'm sure we will.
So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve deeper into some of the more thought-provoking aspects of this document,
Looking forward to it.
including that whole party disloyalty business.
Oh, yeah, that should be interesting.
It should be. All right, we'll be right back after a short break.
So, in part 1, we talk a lot about that structure and the requirements to be a leader in this party.
Uh-huh.
But what I think is really interesting is what this document tells us about the values and the priorities of the Person County Republican Party.
Okay, I'm listening. What kind of insights are we talking about here?
Well, let's go back to that section on candidates for public office. They're very clear about what they consider not in good standing.
Yeah, that was a pretty long list.
Yeah.
Inconsistent positions, questionable legal or moral standing, lack of association with the party dereliction of duty. I mean, they really covered all the bases.
Right, and think about why those things are red flags for them. They're worried about people blurring the lines between being a conservative Republican and a liberal Democrat.
Right. You hear that a lot in national politics.
Uh-huh.
But it's interesting to see it playing out at the local level like this.
Exactly. And what I find fascinating is that they specifically mention this concern in the context of certain parts of the country. So it makes you wonder, are there specific local issues in Person County where they're seeing this happening? Is there like a particular debate where those lines are getting fuzzy?
So it's like they're looking at national trends, but through a local lens.
Exactly. They're basically saying, this is what we believe, and if you don't align with these values, you're not a good fit for our party.
That's a pretty bold strategy.
It is.
You would think maybe they'd want to be a little more open to compromise, to appeal to a broader base.
You would think, but it raises the question of, how do local parties balance representing their constituents with upholding a strict set of values?
Yeah, are they willing to risk alienating some voters just to stay true to their ideology?
It's a tough question, and it makes you wonder if this approach actually helps them win elections or if it backfires.
Well, I guess only time will tell on that one. All right, so speaking of things that are